Okay, so welcome everyone to Slither number 18. Our guest or our speaker today is Chip Nataro, and he's going to talk to us about utilizing Libretext. And as part of the Slithers, we start talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think no time is more pertinent than this COVID-19 pandemic to really see how DEI has impacted the classroom. And I think this is a really timely topic as we've moved online and juggled different modalities and tried to figure out how to reach as many students as possible. So with that, I would just like to thank everyone for coming. If you can keep yourself muted during the presentation, but if you would like to interrupt Chip, he is more than happy with that, more than happy to be interrupted. So with that, Chip, I'll let you go ahead.
All righty, Matt, thank you much. Thanks everyone for coming today. And let me close down Slack so my research students don't interrupt my train of thought, which gets derailed very easily. Adam Johnson, I don't know if I want to admit him. So I'm going to talk a little bit about today about my experience switching to a Libretext, and this is a rather new and sudden switch, but hopefully we'll have some good discussion and I'll learn some things because I am sure there's some folks here that are much more expert at this than I. So with that, I know this is very hard to imagine, but a group of inorganic chemists walk into a bar, and eventually, assuming there's someone like, I don't know, maybe Joanne there that will get them to start talking and not just hide in the corner like I would probably be prone to do. It won't be long before so what book do you use question comes up. Pretty much guaranteed. And the reason that question comes up, well, that was actually kind of answered a few years ago in a number of different papers. I chose this one in particular looking at the foundation inorganic course because I'm talking about my foundation course here today, so it made the most sense. But as this lovely paper from members of the Ionic Viper Leadership Council and some other good friends of Viper found, there's sort of four big clusters of courses at the descriptive level, or at the foundational level. A descriptive chemistry course, fundamentals and selected topics, a survey, two different types of survey there. So essentially there isn't one inorganic course. So the answer to this question, what book do you use? Well, it pretty much gets an answer along these lines. I use blank, but I don't really like it because. And I'm no exception to that. I bounced around books for a number of years. I've mostly used Miesler, Fisher, and Tarr. I used Housecroft for a little while, but I was never really satisfied with them. And there's some reasons for that. This is my syllabus or the outline of what I'm covering this semester. It's not incredibly descriptive here. But what I want to focus in on is what happens in my class on the first day of class. Of course, you give out the syllabus. That's fairly common kind of stuff. We talk about that for a little bit. I have to talk to my two different classes at the same time. That's because students have the option to take the class with and without the lab. So I need to address the students in lab with some things, and I need to address the students who don't take the lab with some of the additional assignments they're going to have with respect to the class. So I usually let them know, okay, this group can take a nap for a minute while I talk to the other, and vice versa. I then have the students introduce themselves. Generally, this class runs around 20 students, and I'll probably know about 3 or 4 of them heading into the class. either from Gen Chem or just because they've been around the department. Um, this semester, since I'm all kind of remote, and we've been remote since last April, the number I know out of my 21 is more like two, I think, ahead of time. So good to give them a chance to talk. They're going to hear me enough during the semester. We then do the kind of Viper, what is inorganic chemistry learning object? Have them talk for a couple of moments what they think inorganic chemistry is going to cover. Generally, it's, not organic. Sometimes it's there's no carbon. I have to correct them on that very quickly. So we have a good little discussion about that. And then we talk about the fundamental particles of an atom. Now, the reason I start there is because I want to set them up with something that hopefully they remember from Gen Chem, and it's pretty much slam dunk, because this is the first class of the spring semester at 8 a.m. on Monday morning after they've come back from a pretty long break. We have a January interim session, so we typically start about the last Monday in January for the spring semester, and they've been off for 6-7 weeks, and sometimes so they really need that slam dunk. Oh yeah, I know something. He wants me to say like protons and neutrons and electrons and that kind of thing. At first, they tend to be a little hesitant, like he's setting us up for a trap, but once someone is brave enough to kind of offer the yes, I am asking you a Gen Chem question, they'll usually chime right in. So we set them up for that. And then I talk about mass spec. And you're like, mass spec? What in God's name are you doing bringing up mass spec on the first day of class? Well, I have my reasons. Mostly I'm nuts, but it's because I have lab the second day of the semester and I need a lab for them to do. And the lab I've had them do is we do GC mass of a sample I made up of related compounds. This is, my personal biased favorite. It's a mixture of ferrocene, rathenocene, and osmocene. And we run it through the GC mass. And, we're able to look at the different isotopes. We just talked about isotopes in class in the mass spectrum. We talk about GC and how that functions, but it's the really mass spec part that I like. The actual physical lab itself is incredibly short, 20 minutes if the GC mass is behaving that day. And usually we kind of get the sample injected and I talk to them about how the instrument is working. And from there, the lab is designed for them to do a lot of very guided searching in SciFinder and other things along those lines. So I think it's a lab that works really well for me. But it's really odd that I kind of introduce mass spec on the first day of class. It fits nicely. And you can imagine that the number of inorganic textbooks that introduce mass spec very early on is very, very small. And in fact, the number of inorganic textbooks that introduce mass spec at all is relatively small. This is not a comprehensive list, but it does give you a feel. The House textbook doesn't talk about mass spec at all. Miesler, Fisher, and Tarr has it mentioned in one place and basically points you towards Drago's physical methods book. Housecroft and Sharp have a couple of examples. Wellerton, Overton, Rourke, and Armstrong, which is a replacement to a text that many of you know by another name, has a really nice section on mass spec. Wolfsburg doesn't seem to have mass spec at all. Fenning, I wasn't really sure. I don't actually have a copy of it, so I'm not sure what kind of introduction it is. So not a lot of these textbooks have much on mass spec, and if they do, it's really brief, like here's a mass spec. It doesn't have any of the here's how the instrument works, what you can learn from it. And of course, another aspect of this is you can see the prices. This is just off of Amazon. These books are pretty freaking expensive. When $100 looks attractive, yikes. So that had always bugged me, especially knowing that my course has a pretty high population of chemical engineers in it who really are probably never going to look at an inorganic textbook again. Um, so I got extremely motivated this January interim, um, especially because we started even 2 weeks later than normal. We started February 8th, um, to find a solution. So with a little chatting, a little convincing from some friends, I started looking into Libretext. I had done that previously. I had looked at them for Gen Chem, and I didn't look too hard. I know the main issues that kind of kept me from Libretext, when I was looking Gen Chem as part of a committee, were the idea of there's not quite so many worked examples. There's not really a great way to do a homework system linked to it. That I know that's kind of changed. It was a few years ago. Um, and it just seemed a bit overwhelming to, like, we might have to modify books and do that kind of work. So it was a cursory glance, but I really started digging at it for my inorganic course. And I really liked what I found. There was a lot of good stuff. And oh, I get to admit, Kyle, I feel privileged. Um, and I like the flexibility. It's like, someone's written a really nice section on mass spec. I don't have to do it. I can just do that, pull it right into my textbook. So I started playing with the system, and I have a book now. I actually am the first person from Lafayette College to have a Libretext. So I created our bookstore or book front or whatever it's called, um, which is kind of exciting. But not everything I needed was there. Um, but I was able to pull in a lot of things, and now I have a book that covers what I want to cover. So early on, I have something on mass spec. I've got a nice section on bioinorganic chemistry on the end, some great stuff on coordination chemistry, and everything in between. There's none of those, oh, we skipped chapter 7 because we're not going to talk about it in this class. So it's all there. The book is available online to students. I was able to get a PDF of it. It's on my Moodle page. They could even order a print copy if they really wanted to. I don't think anyone has, but they could do that. So I really appreciate that. The fact that it took very little modification, in some cases none whatsoever, was just wonderful to me. It's kind of a Viper motto, adapt and adopt. I did that. Some of it I did have to go in and modify pretty heavily. A lot of the stuff on molecular orbitals, I follow a lot of what Adam Johnson has published on ligand group orbitals and those sorts of things. And I had to go in and make pages on that stuff, and we'll look at that in a few minutes. But it wasn't too terrible. A lot of that I did just write from scratch. So there were a couple of days there where I was banging out some stuff, and it took a while, but I'm really happy with the product. So let's take a look at one of these things that I pretty much did from scratch, which is on expanded octets and molecular orbitals. And come on, Link. There you go. Ooh, fancy. Now, someone can nod for me. Am I sharing a Chrome now? Good, good, good. So here's the page I came up with for expanded octets and molecular orbitals. I don't expect us to sit here and read everything, but we've got some nice tables of contents and other things. I was able to figure out how to put in questions for students while they're reading with nice hidden answers. So we can draw. Oh, look at that. I just found a typo. That should be sulfur tetrafluoride. Hey, look, on the fly, we're going to learn something. I can just hit edit up here and change hexa to tetra and save. Haha, amazing. All right. You'd think I planned to do that. It's not true. So using VESFR, draw the three-dimensional structure, solve for tetrafluoride. They can click, they can get a nice little answer. Oh no, it's not tetrahedral. You forgot a lone pair. So we get the seesaw shape. So then we go through and we find the point group. I provide them with character tables. This is my foundation course, so I generally cheat and provide them with these severely reduced character tables to just kind of give them the take-home message they need, rather than going through all the details. In my senior level inorganic course, we get the full character tables and we go through what all this stuff is telling them, but it's definitely not something that I do in my sophomore level course. So then we go through and we make the LGOs. Yay, ChemDraw, some nice pictures. Talk about constructing the MO diagram. So here we have the MO diagram for SF4 that, again, we just do using ligand group orbitals. Nothing too fancy. And then I went and ran them on WebMO. Free plug for Will there, Joanne. Yeah, look at that. Took some nice pictures and just discussed, what do we see in WebMO, doing calculations on this molecule compared to our quick and dirty back of the envelope sort of method. So a nice full page on this, walk student through an example, and it's exactly the way I cover it in class, and we learn how to do it in class. So I think that's really cool. They can't say the textbook isn't helpful to them now, I hope. We'll see. So we'll shrink that down. So it was easy, right? This was a piece of cake. I like to use this excuse. I am currently acting department head, so I'm acting. I'm not really a department head. I just play one on TV. I am, I guess you could say, a Libretext author, but I am just playing one on TV. I am sure I did a ton of stuff wrong. But I found some struggles entering formula, putting in some mathematical equations and making them look right. There's a lot of bracketing and stuff you have to do. I am somewhat stubborn. So, I don't ask for help. I asked Google for help, and was able to eventually piece together enough. Fortunately, trial and error worked really well. It's like, okay, I made a change and it still doesn't look right. And I'd look at Google again and see what I could find. So I think I was able to do that. I certainly cut and paste from people that knew better also.
Hey Chip, what are the formulas like? I mean, are they like LaTeX? Are they like their own complete own thing? What can you compare that to?
If I knew what LaTeX was, I could compare it to that. So someone wiser could probably answer me here, but I think, let's see, will it show up here this way? I saw an equation.
I can answer that. It is.
Go for it.
It's LaTeX, but it's MathJack's version of LaTeX. So, which I never knew this language before I started using Libretext. But whenever I Google something that is LaTeX, I can basically plug it into Libretext, and most of the time it works. I think it's missing some like really specific packages. But if you know LaTeX, then you can use this. You just need to indicate to the editor that you're starting your LaTeX code by putting, I don't even know if that's a / or a backslash, and then parentheses, and then, yeah.
Yeah. So clearly you don't need to know LaTeX to do this either. You just need to be willing to cut, paste, and see what happens. Because I don't know it well. I was able to figure it out. There were some struggles getting some Greek letters from time to time and some other things, but I got there. Figures were a piece of cake. That was simple upload, just dump them in and bam, they showed up. So that was greatly appreciated. Rearranging orders of chapters and pages and indexing was a bit slow at times and frustrating. I probably did it wrong. I'm totally willing to admit that. I'm okay with that. But there were times where you kind of have this large textbook with all these different pages and chapters, and you want to move the order a little bit, and you've got to wait for everything to sort of load and then shift. And I was a little grumbly about that. Again, I probably could have reached out for help on that, but I'm stubborn. I was just trying to get things done. I did fork a lot of pages, and I'll resist any urge to make any kind of joke there, but basically you're copying someone else's pages. And every once in a while that became challenging. I don't know if it was the way I was doing it, or I'd get these messages and none of the context would show up, and that would make me grumbly. So I'd try and find someone else's page that was exactly the same thing and fork that. I would guess that fork you was said a number of times when it didn't quite behave. I'm making people that know this system inside and out now just like cringe and go, oh my God, why is he talking about this? But as I said, I hope to learn stuff here today too. So you can criticize an amateur here freely in a few moments. At one point, I had a page I worked on writing just completely disappear. It's out there somewhere because it's on the internet, so it has to exist. But where it went, I do not ever know. So that one was a grumbly day. And then there were, of course, the internal struggles of this has to be perfect versus this has to be done. And as January continued to come to an end, this has to be done started winning significantly over the this has to be perfect, which is not terribly surprising. I'm sure we've all been in that boat many times. A lot of that came down to doing some calculations with WebMO, and I was also playing around with Gaussian on those, and they were taking longer than I would have hoped. And it's like, you know what, I'm just done. I don't care if these are perfect. Here are the numbers, here are the orbitals. They might look like crap to someone who knows what they're doing, but my students won't know the difference. So I'm okay with it. At the end, I kind of put it out there and magic happened. I don't know exactly how the magic happened, but someone at Libretext took responsibility. And the book wound up indexed beautifully, and everything worked. I had an index and you could go where I wanted. That didn't seem to happen as I was building the book. So the final product is like, oh wow, this is what it looks like cleaned, and it's probably how it should have looked all along. And someone probably got to this and said, what idiot put this together, and made it all nice and pretty, which was great and appreciated. And as I've admitted freely, I just kind of jumped in and did things, and I'm sure I did a lot wrong. Would I do it again? Well, I don't have any feedback from students yet. We're still, we're not even to the halfway point of the semester yet. I'm not stalking them on Moodle to see who's been looking at the book, or stalking them in other ways to see yet. I am going to strongly encourage them at the end of the semester on student evils, that they should be commenting on the book, and if they used it or not, what they thought about it. But as we saw just a few minutes ago, it can always be updated and improved. And apparently even my PowerPoints can be updated now, because Barb having me make a correction is, that's old news. I made a correction 10 minutes ago. So I love that. I do envision my course is going to evolve over time and change. And some of this material might get dropped or updated. So I love the flexibility that it provides. So absolutely, I love this. I love this format. Big proponent. It's something now that I have power, I'm going to have very good conversations with my department about that. We really should be thinking about this for our courses, because it just makes way too much sense. And this is something that I think, the Ionic community should be on board with big time. I know there were some past discussions about links to learning objects in Libretext, and that's a complicated issue with all kinds of copyright sorts of things. but in general, besides me, we're a group of smart people. I think we could figure out ways to really interact with this space and do something great. So with that, I have yapped on more than long enough. I'd be happy to take any questions, and even happier to hear from people that are going to tell me everything I did wrong and how I can avoid that in the future. But I don't know if we want to stick around for 5 hours.
Well, thank you, Chip. I'll point out that Kyle found another mistake and posted it to the chat while we're working.
Awesome.
So
thanks, Kyle.
Just a spelling mistake, but still something else to improve on. So we'll open it up for discussion. I guess I had never thought about using Libretext up until this point. I use an open education resource for my Gen Chem. I use OpenStax, but I'm interested in how many of the people attending have currently used any part of Libretext or have given it consideration. I know I haven't, and so I don't know. Okay, Adam, I see a hand.
Well, I use it more as my textbook doesn't have this topic in it, and I want to fresh up my lecture skills on this topic. But I haven't shared that with the students so much. Although that's not true. Last summer, I taught a summer class to high school students, and I used sections of the Libretext for that, and it worked great. But I didn't make my own. I just sort of said, hey, here's a link, read this section.
Honestly, I think this comes at a perfect time. I've just been weighing whether or not I want to do this for my class in the fall. I hadn't actually looked at Libretext. I didn't know you could kind of create your own book. So now I know. I looked at OpenStax, and they don't really have anything for anything higher level than organic and Gen Chem. So I'm like, I don't want to write my own book. I just don't have that kind of time. But if I can kind of modify existing stuff, that might be something reasonable I can accomplish over a summer.
So Joanne, I think you had a comment.
Yeah, so we looked pretty seriously at using it for Gen Chem, and it was a lot of us that are involved in our Gen Chem course, so it's a lot of people as part of the discussion. We ended up going with a commercial product, so we're using the Macmillan Achieve system, and the upside of that is that Macmillan Achieve has just everything completely integrated. So, for example, I have to give a quiz tomorrow, which I haven't written yet. And I can just kind of go in and say, make a quiz, and I have to pick out questions and stuff, but it works well. And it's got, so the homework, and especially it has these amazing videos for teaching Gen Chem. However, and with the pandemic and all that kind of stuff, it was a hard decision for us, but we haven't ruled it out yet. I mean, we still really want to go that way in Gen Chem. And if I ever get back into inorganic, now that Chip has made the first foray into inorganic, I could totally, I would totally steal his textbook. I would
not the first foray.
I would edit out the term expanded octet, but that's just me.
Mitch, you have a comment?
Yeah, Chip, can you say about how many different kinds of versions of the expanded octet are up on that site, or some other topic? Like, I think, like, when I went to OpenStax and I'm looking at it for Gen Chem, I see just a couple versions, like, and actually some of the versions are just exactly the same but in a different order. But it sounds like you could pick and choose somebody's best description or the one that fits your course.
Yep, exactly. And I did that a lot. There are a lot of repetitive sorts of names and stuff. So let's just do.
Did you end up using a lot of Tom Maluk's stuff, or was it more other people's stuff?
It was more other people's stuff,
Okay.
for sure. But if you were to search, which I'm doing now, and I guess I could go back to share screen here. If you search expanded octets and molecular orbitals, it gives you some pretty good different sort of hits. And odds are, if the names are similar, there's a good chance it's just one version that's been forked by someone else and repeating, maybe with some minor modifications and all that. So there are.
Can I jump in here to help you out?
Yeah, absolutely, please.
Okay, so under filter results, you see the thing that says location. Okay, so oh wow. It's a very I've never seen those many numbers. Maybe there need to be quotes or something. So typically you have content in three different areas. You have the central bookshelves, which are just called bookshelves, the campus bookshelves, and the learning objects. So the stuff that's in the normal, now it's a little too narrow. I'm not entirely sure why. So the things that if it's in just normal bookshelves, you're getting content that has not been remixed into other people's books. So that you try to get your central core content, so you can actually go to things very conveniently. So if you click on bookshelves, the middle one there, each of those things, unless they are on a map, so where we map content to a commercial book, should be relatively unique. And certainly you could then focus it down to specific books and things like that in order to facilitate that. It's just, I'm not entirely sure how you got 20 or 40,000. I mean, that number doesn't make sense, because that would mean that 1/5 of the book is dedicated to molecular orbitals. 1/5 of the whole library is dedicated to molecular orbitals, which is not the case. So
it might have been catching the and in what I was searching.
Right. That's a convenient way in order to move around. Or if you say, for example, you want to look at someone else's remix of a specific topic, so you can say, I only want to see what's in this specific campuses or something like that. They can do that. So sorry to intrude.
No. Certainly appreciated.
So we've got a couple of questions. Brad posted in the chat. How do you handle providing additional practice problems for students like those you find at the end of the chapter?
So I don't have a lot of additional practice problems. I do have some worked out examples like the one I saw. And honestly, when I think back, I usually have students do 1 to 2 problem sets sort of per exam period. I'm actually switching it up this semester, and we're doing quests every 3 weeks, and they get 1 problem set. I wrote all those myself anyway. A lot of the questions in the back of the textbook just go in divergent ways that I didn't want to do. So on some levels, that's where my fear, or what am I trying to say? That's where I didn't feel so wed to a published textbook, because I didn't use them. And that was some of my concerns in a Gen Chem book, because so much of the answer has always been, work more problems in the back of the book. As I've been having some serious thoughts about how we do Gen Chem and thinking about, really kind of changing the way the class is done, I think my weddedness to textbooks with lots of problems in the back and telling students to just go do them to practice is waning, which is why my openness to this sort of textbook in Gen Chem is growing.
All right, Catherine, you have a next question or comment?
I do have the option to share my screen. I just was gonna point out some resources that might be helpful if anybody is thinking about using it for inorganic, but I can't share my screen.
Oh, I can make that happen.
Yeah, we can make that happen.
I think.
There you go.
Here we go. Okay. For new users, let me just point out there's basically 3. So once you go into the chemistry Libretext, there's 2 main places where you put like textbook material. The bookshelves is like literally a library of resources. And then campus bookshelves are things like Chip just described, where he has built something specifically for his course. So when I'm looking for things, so I do use Libretext for a bio-inorganic chemistry course and for my advanced inorganic chemistry course. So anyway, my stuff is on the campus bookshelves in St. Mary's College. But when I'm looking for resources, I usually go and search for a topic here. And then like Delmar showed you, I filter by the campus bookshelves. And then I just look for institutions. And then I find like an instructor that seems to know what they're doing. And then I look at their resources and see if I can kind of trust what they're putting up there. And that's one way I kind of, I guess, figure out which pages I want to be wasting my time looking at to see if they're good, because as you saw, there's a lot of resources that will come up if you type in octet rule. The other thing, I just want to direct your attention to the bookshelves. So in the bookshelves, there's two main places that I have found inorganic chemistry resources. One of them is in the introductory chemistry stuff, and the you may be familiar with, where is it? It seems to be gone. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong place. It's the textbook that was developed by faculty at St. Benedict's and St. John's University. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Anyway, it's in here somewhere. So I thought it was in Gen Chem. I haven't been on here. Oh, there, I looked at the wrong one. Here we go. So this book by Schaller has some like introductory level inorganic chemistry stuff that's pretty good. And then in the inorganic chemistry section, a lot of these maps are just, so there's two different main kinds of things here. There's a book, so that's like a published book that is open access or Creative Commons, and so they're up here. So there's some things like that that are good here. And then there's the maps. So this is made for someone who wants to try out Libretext for the first time but doesn't want to change their syllabus. So this is a map of the content like in the right order for inorganic chemistry, Miesler, Fisher, Tar. And this is actively being built now by myself and Stephen Contakes at, I don't remember, in California, I forget his institution, but this stuff, we're building practice problems into here, but this is one of the major, I think, gaps that we really need to address is practice problems for students. So anyway, that's, right, I think, all I want to say, but I'm happy to answer any technical questions too, because I've been using this for a while and I'm one of the developers.
Thank you, Catherine.
Can you do exactly the search you were talking about? Can you show us, like, when you're searching, how you whittle those down?
Sure. Okay, so if I wanted to find molecular orbital theory, or let's do Slater's rules. So there's a long list, right? So I don't like wasting time, right? And you probably don't either. So there's a couple ways that I can narrow down my searches. So I could look in the location, and so campus bookshelves. And then basically I see different institutions. So if I know, I know there's an inorganic chemist at Lafayette College that's using this, I can go right there and say, okay, Chip's using something. Okay, he's got something here. I'm gonna go look at his course. So basically, let me go back. You can kind of cheat by looking at the URL here and see where all of these things are. So basically, that's kind of how I narrow down to figure out where there are inorganic chemists who I would trust that are working on this sort of thing. That's what I meant. And then you can also look at like I want to go back, all results. So the bookshelves. So I can see, right, there's zones where I can find Slater's rules. Gen Chem, I don't know if I want a Gen Chem level explanation. Maybe I want an inorganic chemistry, like an upper level, and I can see the books and the maps that I can find Slater's rules. So a lot of the time when I find a nice description or a nice article in one book, I tend to, look more broadly in that one resource to see what else I can use from that resource. That makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Tasneem, you had your hand up.
Oh, hi. This is Tasnim from Tennessee State. My concern is we can't find homework as we can for undergrad Gen Chem level, even for organic chemistry. Inorganic chemists don't have a homework commercially available because it's not profitable. So since we are here in this kind of a hub, why can't we all chip in and come up with a repository of these different kind, whatever possible formula, algorithm driven question, different kind of modality. Pardon me. And we can, if we could do that I think, and everybody who is willing to adopt, they could adopt for fee, low fee or no fee, and that would be something good. I think that's the only thing. And you all kind of answered because there is some practice problems, but if we could put them in the form of a homework assignment, and for me personally, I think it's a big motivator for student learning. So that's it. I'm going to stop.
Well, I don't know if you're catching the chat or not, but there's a lot of the same answer flying through the chat of check out www.ionicviper.org for lots of homework problems that people use and have shared and are available for use. It's definitely not a learning system style of, students can access it online and plug in answers and get immediate feedback, but there are questions there.
Can I jump in if I may?
Yeah.
Okay, so we received a grant last year from the state of California in order to build a homework system to supplement these books. I'm not sure if I can share the screen, which I cannot, but there's a link to the ADAPT homework system, which is there, and it's actually multimodal, which has a handful of different things, and it's designed. It's being built for general chemistry, even though it's applicable across the board using several different technologies, and it has questions that are numerical. It can be introduced algorithmically, so you can handle those sort of issues. It also has the ability in order to build learning trees, so you can construct more adaptive virtual tutor-like approaches. We're folding it in with some culturally responsive pedagogy because that's important in the last, it's been important for a long time, but certainly the last year has really scaled up a lot. It has a clicker system embedded into it, and it has a system up that lets us combine different technologies conveniently, so you can actually start to do like I was going to show one example where you have a molecule, or it could be an organic molecule interactive, so you can use something like JSMol or whatever, and then you can have questions down below that would be related to the nature of the question. So you can say, is this RS or whatever other funky stuff that inorganic chemists like to use for their nomenclature, which I always find confusing. I'm a physical chemist, so I can claim that.
Delmar, I've made you a co-host if you want to share.
Oh, okay. Let me show this quickly.
Okay.
This is freely available for you guys. You can also embed these questions into your textbook and such. We have the so this is, for example, let's go through my class that I just finished last quarter. I'm a big proponent of giving lots of homework to students because I believe that is my job. So students have to do homework every single day, either in weekly homework problem sets or in daily. So weeklies are big problem sets. So in this case here, this is open-ended questions because it's tend to how to use this. But anyways, you can embed this into, and the students can interact with them. You can get the statistics associated with it. You can, again, make it algorithmic and do a handful of things. You can make learning trees. So this is the thing that we're very excited about in order to get going. So for example, building courses instead of learning trees. So let me see some of the learning trees that have been constructed. So the idea behind the learning tree, in this case here, it doesn't, this one here is not the best one. That's also not much. So this is largely junk because other people have been building the trees. The idea is that you build a learning tree, a student gets it right or wrong, and they can go down different paths depending upon how you want to go through that. There's simpler questions, learning objectives in order to facilitate something of a virtual tutor that puts in there. The problem for us is not the technology behind it, it's to build effective learning trees because there are different philosophies on how they should be constructed and utilized effectively. We have set up the system in order to make 3 levels of questioning stored up here, and we're still kind of ironing this thing out. One are a set of questions that are meant to be community gallery, so the sort of things that that any student can find, which I think is something that was also mentioned here. So if you have any question that you give out there that you can find as a faculty member, then the student can find also. Then we have a faculty area, which means that only faculty have access to that. And then we have instructor area, which is only the instructors for their specific class that they have available for. We have the ability to build these Frankensteins, which I'd like to mention. So you can take something like, in this case here, I take a PhET simulation, and I can then glue a PhET simulation on one side. In this case here, I'm not entirely sure what it's going to be. And then I can embed down in here, in this case here, some other question that's related to that simulation. I'm not entirely sure why it's not pulling up. There it is, which just deals with it. So you can take something that's intrinsically not meant in order to be a question and make a visualization around it. Or, and that can be any technology. So for example, if you make a Frankenstein with a structure, you can throw out something like this and ask something silly like what name it or what structure it is, or what we will have wired up with some molecular editor, draw the enantiomer of it or the stereoisomer. So have things a little bit more advanced off of there. And these things, again, can be questions that are publicly available or questions that are privately available or shared amongst faculty. That's it. That's the homework system. We do have, we've been going through some effort recently in order to take our books and have a section up called ancillary materials, which can be closed to only faculty, where we can actually store a database of questions and things like that we don't want faculty, don't want students to access. But obviously that is just basically questions on a page and not within an infrastructure like the ADAPT system, where you can say, here is a course, and this is my course dedicated for this specific textbook that I have written, and I can then copy this and hand it off to somebody, and they then have all this infrastructure in place in terms of what they would do in order to be able to move it forward off of that. And I believe that this sort of commons is something that's going to be very important in the upcoming future, because as you build the infrastructure for like an inorganic chemistry class, you can hand it off to somebody and say, these are how I have organized it for my class, with it all ready to go. And someone can just click a button, change some dates in order to make it work, and then you're ready to rock off of that.
Can I ask a question, Delmar?
Yes.
So these are individual homework assignments basically that this list? Is that right?
These are assignments, and assignments are like a set of, it's a problem set. So each assignment then has multiple assessments. In this case here, it's just one assessment for that lecture homework, because it's just meant to make sure that they do something.
And is this ready for prime time? Like, can we use this now? Okay.
Yeah, I'm using it. I've used it for the last 6 months, and this quarter I'm using it at scale with about 500 students in my class. So it's.
And does it store their grades? Like,
yep.
How do you get their grades out of there?
Are we recording this?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. So I can't show you the grade book.
Question.
Let me see here.
I can pause it, and then
if you want to pause it, I can show you the grade book.
Right.
So now I'm not showing anything that I shouldn't. Thank you. So it's not a library. It's actually a different technology. So let me phrase that. It combines different technologies together that you can make as valid assessments. So you can make a page up, a single page that's a single question here, and that could be a valid assessment that you put into Adapt. Or you can grab from some of the other technologies like our H5P server, which we're updating it. So you can make H5P problems. Now H5P problems are relatively, it's a very, very simple technology that I don't know. So for example, if you want to do some French it's French. So here's an example of this drag and drop based approach for it. So there's a range of different technologies, different problems in this technology, and you can embed this directly into a book. So for example, my belief is that we're building the textbook of the future, and the textbook of the future is a textbook of technology. It's a textbook of interoperability and engagement, and that means the textbook needs to have this mixture. So this is from Kansas State. It's about 200 students have been using this for this quarter, and they've been doing their homework embedded into their textbook. So in this case here, we adapt that problem here, which is, I'm not logged into it, but when the student is logged in and they're able to access it, they can do their problem directly on here. So in this thing, the problem when you do with some of these problems is that they are, not all of them satisfy accessibility requirements in different states.
Delmar, in the interest of time, I'd like to get to some of the
okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we've only got about 4 minutes left. So,
okay, I will stop. I have a tendency to talk too much.
Joanne, did you still have a question?
So, well, sort of, it's all tied in related to this, and that is, Chip, did you end up using any sort of Viper LOs or anything, and how, or do you foresee ways to get the two to integrate or talk to each other?
Integrate or talk to, other than the faculty member coming up with ways to make them integrate and talk to each other, not currently, but I do use them, but I don't know that I can publish them in the book, but that doesn't preclude me from using them in class.
So the one way that I handle this problem is I basically, so I don't have to send my students to a whole bunch of different places. I just embed a link in my Google Drive to my homeworks. This is a workaround at the moment, but this is kind of what I tried to start doing. And that's why I was always sending you guys emails about whether I was doing things okay. So it sounded like the things that were like in-class activities could be put onto Libretext and shared with attribution. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, it depends on the individual license, but everybody pretty much chooses the same license, which is open with adapt. I mean, you can even make changes to them and stuff as long as the original source is credited.
Yeah, I really would. I mean, it would be really nice to have homework available. I would love to work on this problem with anybody who's interested. And I guess before time runs out, I just want to put a plug that we've got money if anybody wants to spend some time helping. So there's some funds at St. Mary's that are part of a grant that Delmar applied for that we can pay for some time if you're willing to work on this. And I would love to work with all of you or any of you. Come and help.
All right. Adam, did you still have a question or comment?
I just wanted to say this is such a great idea because I start with, Chip starts with mass spec. I start with crystal field theory, Tanabe-Sagana diagrams, and symmetry. And then I step all the way back to, Lewis structures, right? And that's, again, to support the lab. Otherwise, the first 3 weeks of lab are just staring at the wall. And so if I do crystal field theory and Tanabe-Sagana diagrams first, we can do UV vis on week 1 and they'll know what they're looking at. And this is a fantastic way to approach it. Because all of our courses are different. All right, I'll take chapter 7 from this book and that's chapter 1. I love it. I don't want to do it, but I love it. I'm happy to just say, all right, read chapter 16 and then chapter 7 and then chapter 8.1. And that's what I do. And the students just deal with it.
Well, to respect everyone's time, we're at the end of the hour. I'd like to thank our presenter, Chip, for giving us insight into Libretext for those of us that haven't used it. And then thank you, everyone. I'm going to be sending around a review Google Doc. Just, let me know, let us know if this was helpful and that we all enjoyed it. It's a great place for discussion. So thank you very much. And I hope everyone has a great day.